Chapter 21 Part 1. When Bai Jing came out of the bathroom, Gu Yuanchao took a breath, and for the first time had doubts about his concentration. The other party was wearing the white sweater he had prepared, which was soft in texture and bright in color, fully revealing the youth's fresh and elegant temperament, exuding a kind of sunshine. The neckline of the sweater is a little loose, revealing a delicate and small collarbone and a small piece of porcelain white skin, revealing a faint pink smudged by the heat, which is particularly attractive under the light of the light. The young man's soft and fluffy hair still had wet drops of water on it. The moment he swayed gently, a few drops rolled down his neck and never entered the depths of his neckline, making his mouth dry. Not to mention that when those misty brown eyes looked over, that kind of clear, innocent, and defenseless appearance, I really want people to press him under the body and kiss him fiercely, leaving their own mark on the delicate skin. Xiaoan, I still have something to do. You send Bai Jing back? Gu Yuanchao rolled his Adam's apple involuntarily, looked away slightly, and his voice was much lower than usual.
Yes.
Xiaoan took the order and left the Gu family with the boy. Before leaving, Bai Jing glanced at Gu Yuanchao suspiciously. The active reaction in the opponent's body is already very active, approaching the limit of physical fitness, and now it has reached an unprecedented peak, which shows that he is in a state of extreme excitement. Could the physique of 3S still evolve? He is really envious. Bai Jing asked Joan to send him to the Empire Rose restaurant, and according to the message from Jean Mao, he came to the private room on the second floor. Empire Rose restaurant is the top 3 aristocratic restaurants in the entire empire. Not to mention the high fees. All the people who come and go here are business tycoons or aristocratic sons with a certain level of net worth, and they have to spend a lot of money to get the restaurant's gold card. This gold card was handled when the Jean family was at its peak. Now that the Jean family has declined, there are not many remaining permissions. This time, Father Jean was willing to take it out to celebrate his son. Each private room of the restaurant has a different style, or it can be simulated in the interstellar battlefield, the noble manor, the gorgeous starry sky, and even the ancient earth. After entering the door, clusters of holographic virtual roses bloomed one after another from the feet of Bai Jing, extending to every corner of the room, as if they had strayed into a sea of roses, which was enough to confuse the real. Fatty Jean Mao and Ngu were already waiting in the room. Seeing Bai Jing, Jean Mao immediately shouted excitedly, "Brother Jing, come here. It's your turn to order." Bai Jing looked at the menu on the light screen, and any dish on it cost 3,000 to 5,000 star coins, and even tens of thousands of star coins. The price was ridiculously high. The two had already ordered 5 or 6 dishes, and he symbolically ordered a dried shredded bamboo shoots and put them back. After the beautiful dinner plate wrapped the exquisite food, Bai Jing's feeling of expensiveness became more prominent. The plates of each dish are gorgeous, surrounded by layers of gold rims, and inside are carved with beautiful paintings, with exquisite carvings and vivid characters. But the food only took up 1/3 of the size of the center of the plate, and the portion was very small. Both Bai Jing and Ngu were here for the first time, and Jean Mao was the second time. Ever since he came here once when he was a child, he has been unforgettable. The amazing taste has left him fresh in his memory until now. Seeing that neither of them moved their chopsticks, Jean Mao urged, "Don't look at the small amount. The taste is amazing. Try it quickly." Saying that, he took the lead to put a piece of curry beef into his mouth. The beef has infiltrated the unique aroma of curry, and the soup is rich and chewy, but for some reason he felt that the taste of curry was a little heavy, and the aroma of the beef itself was lost, which was completely inferior to what Bai Jing gave him during training. "Brother Jing, tell me the truth. Are you a descendant of a chef in ancient Earth?" Jian Mao looked at Bai Jing with a broken face. "You are too strong. You can tie for the first place with Du Xingyu in the exam, and you can even surpass the top 3 restaurants in the empire in cooking. Bai Jing, eat." Jian Mao took a few bites and continued, "Brother Jing, if we can't become a famous stone gambler, you can open a restaurant with me." "Bai Jing, I'm done eating." The two stared dumbfounded at the 2 bare plates on Bai Jing's right hand, shocked by his speed. After swiping the card, Jean Mao had excitement in his eyes. "Do you have anything to do in the afternoon? Do you want to go to Gambling Stone Street? The wool there is much cheaper than that of Gu's and other major wool areas, which is very suitable for newbies like us." Neither Bai Jing nor Ngu had any objections, so the two of them took Jean Mao's white suspension car and came to Gambling Stone Street, a somewhat remote location. The location of Gambling Stone Street is far away from the downtown area, and it took the three of them more than half an hour to ride the extremely fast suspension car. Different from the Hall of Gwanghwaejianren in Gu's Woolen area, this is a very wide street, about 70 to 80 meters wide, with no end in sight. In addition to some regular shops on both sides of the road, there are many large and small stalls. The stall owners set up tents directly with extremely tough fabrics. There are several half-new blankets on the open space, and dozens of pieces of wool are scattered on it, which is somewhat similar to the stalls on the ancient earth. Very casual. Although the environment is simple, but in general, the whole street is full of stalls and shops selling wool, and there are hundreds of them. Bai Jing looked around and saw that the flow of people here was no worse than that of Gu's woolen area. There were many people in front of each booth picking woolens. Judging by their clothes, civilians accounted for the majority. Jin Mao said to the two, "This is it. Although the tools and shops here are relatively simple, in fact, there are many good jadeites in it, but you just need to choose carefully. It's not like the giants of the Gu family who have senior stone gamblers to divide the wool. Most of them ask a few experienced masters to take a look and make a rough division. If you are lucky, you might be able to pick up a leak." Bai Jing walked to the first booth. This booth covers an area of about 400 to 500 square meters. It is a relatively large booth in Gambling Street, and the location is also good. All the wool was placed randomly on the ground, simply divided into 3 piles. The 2 piles on the left are fully plugged wool, and there are hundreds of pieces. On the right stone platform are 7 or 8 pieces of half-plugged wool. Totally blocked wool refers to the rough stone without openings. Because the rough stone has a thick layer of weathering shell on the surface, the material inside cannot be seen and needs to be identified by oneself, so it is called full gambling. The risk of all betting on wool is extremely high, and the probability of jadeite is relatively small. Semi-gambling wool material, also known as semi-clearing material, refers to cutting or rubbing a hole on the surface of the rough jadeite stone, which is called opening the skylight. People can judge the kind, color, quality, etc. of the internal jade through the skylight opened. Relatively speaking, the probability of betting will be higher, but the price is also high. A few middle-aged people in front of the booth were approaching to study the pieces of half-gambling wool that had a skylight. One of them was wearing the latest light brain and was well-dressed. He was holding a strong light and moving repeatedly around a half-human high wool cut. His brows were sometimes furrowed and sometimes relaxed, as if he was a little uncertain. The stall owner of booth number 1 is very young, probably in his 20s, with a dark and thin face, with a shrewd look on his face. As soon as he saw Bai Jing and the 3 of them, he eagerly stepped forward and greeted. "A few little brothers just came to Gambling Stone Street? Oh, you are right to come to me. The wool materials here are specially shipped from the old field of Soder Star, and the probability of jadeite is high." Jin Mao couldn't help laughing, and Bai Jing and Nji's expressions were also a little embarrassing. "That's it? Also the old field of Soder Star?" Looking at the gray woolen fabrics rolling in the sand on the booth, Jin Mao almost died of laughter. The old market of Soder Star is a white sandskin with delicate skin. After not seeing him for a while, the stall owner's ability to open his eyes and talk nonsense has become much better. Bai Jing briefly glanced at the wool on the ground. The surface of these wools is relatively rough, and many of them also have sediment, which looks dirty. Unlike Gu's woolen area, the wools are carefully cleaned and displayed on a white table. However, this also shows that this is untreated wool from other planets. It has not been carefully partitioned, but there is a possibility of leakage. Bai Jing swept around and didn't see the price, so he asked, "What is the price of this pile of wool?" The stall owner looked at the good quality clothes of Jin Mao and Bai Jing, especially the space button hanging around Jin Mao's neck for a few seconds before he said with a smile, "Little brother, you have such a good eye. My batch of wool is a good material from the old farm. There is no shortage of pine flowers and pythons under the sand. I will give you a cheaper price. Calculated at 600 stars per kilogram, it is also a bargain." Returning customer. Bai Jing frowned. "Isn't that more expensive than the scraps of Gu's District E?" He couldn't help but look at Jin Mao. "Where's this cheap?" Jin Mao laughed angrily when he heard this. He wanted to save face for this person, but now he doesn't need to. "Wang Ping, open your dog's eyes and see who I am." Wang Ping carefully observed Jin Mao's facial features and smiled. "Hey, isn't this young Master Jin? You haven't been here for a long time. Sorry for your clumsy eyes. I'll apologize to you." The little fat man rolled his eyes and said, "Stop talking nonsense. I brought a friend here. Tell me the real price, or I'll leave." This stall owner has a thicker skin than the city wall, and there is no embarrassment on his face. It's easy to say, the first pile of wool will give you 300 stars per kilogram, and the second pile of wool will cost you 500 stars per kilogram. Seeing that the two young masters are new, I will give you a 20% discount. What do you think? Bai Jing was speechless. The wool that had just been sold for 600 star coins turned into 300 star coins in an instant. This place is not ordinary black. And Ji's eyes lit up instantly. A 20% discount for 300 star coins is equivalent to only 240 star coins per kilogram of wool. In this way, he can pick more, and once he can open jade, he can get a point. At the same time, Ngu also silently thanked the two in his heart. He understood that it was a friend who was taking care of him. The wool here is cheap, which is just right for someone like him who doesn't have many stars in his account. If he doesn't come here to try his luck, he doesn't know what year and month he will be able to collect 5 points and be promoted to the first-level stone gambler. Bai Jing squatted down at the first pile of wool and rinsed the few pieces of wool at his feet with clean water, exposing the surface of the leather case. He looked at them one by one, and most of the wool materials did not perform very well. There were no python belts and no pine flowers. Some had cracks on the surface. It seemed that the sediment on the surface was also a means of disguise. After looking at more than a dozen pieces in a row, I finally found one that could barely catch the eye. This is a rock with a sandy skin overturned by water. It is an irregular flat polygon with a yellow-gray surface and a rust-colored trace on the skin, with ribbon-like pine flowers. After Bai Jing washed the sand and stones on the surface, he frowned slightly, because there were a few linear fine tufts spreading along the rust-colored lines, not very deep, but he couldn't judge whether it caused damage to the inside of the wool. He penetrated his perception into the wool, and the active reaction inside was negligible, and there was only a small amount of reaction at the bottom. It seemed that the fine strands did destroy the jade meat. Bai Jing wanted to put down this piece of wool, but on second thought, he couldn't bet every time. It was too conspicuous. The wool here is so cheap, it is better to use the broken wool to decompose the stone. He has not tried it himself. He put the piece of wool in the shopping cart behind him and started looking at the others. After a while, the little fat man Jean Mao came over. The automatic shopping cart behind him was already full, at least 8 or 9 pieces of wool. He looked at the only 2 pieces of wool in Bai Jing's shopping cart and said with a grin, as expected of Brother Jing, he chose carefully. Unlike me, in order to earn more points, he can only work hard in quantity. The stone gambling apprentice is promoted to the first-level stone gambling master and only needs to obtain points, and the gambling increase rate is not calculated. In other words, as long as you can get 5 points, no one cares about you even if you buy 1,000 pieces of wool to dissolve the stone. But after becoming a first-level stone gambler, it is different, and there are strict requirements for the betting rate. You must reach 15 points, and at the same time the betting rate is above 10%, in order to be promoted to the second-level stone gambler. This is not the only way to advance based on quantity. What is needed is the ability to truly judge the jade and wool, plus a little luck, in order to continue to move up. The promotion rules for stone gamblers are a set of promotion mechanisms developed by the Stone Gamblers Association after hundreds of years of continuous improvement. Naturally, there is a reason for its existence. Going from a stone gambling apprentice to a first-level stone gambling master is a stage of learning and accumulating experience, so it is necessary to play more stone gambling, strive to contact a variety of wool materials, and expand their horizons. Starting from the second-level stone gambler, it is to develop in a professional direction. The setting of the betting rate will screen out at least half of the candidates, let some inappropriate people stop there, and avoid the flood of stone gamblers. The little fat man Jean Mao came to Ngu when he saw that Bai Jing was still choosing. Ngu also selected 5 or 6 pieces of wool material. He and Jean Mao summed it up and planned to untie these wool materials first to see how the quality was before continuing to choose. If the betting rate is too low, the two are ready to go to other booths to see. Half of the 10 pieces of wool selected by Jean Mao came from the first pile, and half came from the second pile, totaling 21,600 star coins. The stall owner wiped off the fraction and counted it as 21,000 star coins. The 6 pieces of wool that Ngu picked were all from the first pile, and they only cost 240 stars per kilogram.